Okay, I'm going to talk about the flight simulator. It's in the games directory. It's called Eagle Dive, and it's an 8-core flight simulator. Okay, so I gained some altitude. Okay, so it's done with triangles. If you look at the code, let's see, it's 975 lines of code. The first part makes the map, and basically what it is panels, polygon panels. First, it starts with it starts by making elevations by raising up rectangles that are it does a level of a rectangle, then it shortens it, and then puts another rectangle on top, and it kind of builds up mountains. And when it's done making the elevations, then it calculates the normal of all the squares. It does it with multi-core. The initialization surprisingly takes a significant amount of time, and so that's why I do it with multi-cores. Anyway, so it calculates the normal for each grid square because it's been elevated, and then it tries to combine the normals into faces that are polygons, strictly rectangles. So if you look, well, anyway, it has a water level that it chops everything off, and it has a level for making snow-capped mountains, and this does not do lighting, shading. This does just some of my programs do shading with lighting, but these are just fixed triangles. They're quads. I don't know, do you call them quads? Anyway, and they have a certain, so it makes a 4-sided polygon with a certain color based on elevation. So once it gets all that done, then it flies around. So once it makes the map, so to make the map, it uses multi-cores, or to when you're flying around, it uses multi-cores. This little diagram here is trying to show how it works. Basically, we don't use a GPU, we use the multi-core CPUs. So we have 8 CPUs drawing the triangles that you see. And basically I broke the screen into strips, and front to back are different strips. I try to do them odd and even to keep, if two cores access the same location, there's no lock. I don't use the lock, and so it would make a glitch on the screen if 2 cores updated the same. I managed to keep them out of each other's way. Anyway, so I have each core doing a strip, and I have them synchronized to the screen updates. If you want to see, so the master is the bootstrap processor, and what it does is every update it draws. There it's drawing the fishes. Okay, so okay, it's checking if you've crashed, if you've gone below the map elevation and you're not in water. If you're in water, you can go deep, but if you're not in water and you go deep, you crash. So it calls, each core does a strip, including core 0, which is the bootstrap core. This is where the bootstrap core is doing its strip. The bootstrap core has a bigger load than any of the other cores. So where do we wait for the cores? We have to synchronize with the cores. We also have to draw the horizon. Okay, I draw the horizon. So if I fill the whole screen with a horizon line, that's kind of tricky to calculate, but I figured it out. And I have a depth buffer. And so I start the other cores running with by setting this flag. They're waiting for this flag. And then I draw my own. Okay, then right here is where I wait for to synchronize. And then when we're all done, we draw the fish with core 0. We draw the text that's on the screen with core 0. So core 0 has a bigger load, so it's the bottleneck. But I think I make the cores dynamic so that they do a strip size. They go right to left as far as they can during the time they have. I think I make that dynamic. Okay, there's where I'm drawing the horizon. That was tricky. So here's each strip. Where's the strips? So these are all writing to a buffer in memory. And when it does the screen update, all it does, this is the callback that the window manager calls, 30 frames a second, and it just blots the back buffer onto the screen 30 times a second. I try to stay synchronized. We wait for the window manager. Anyway, so here's where each core, including core 0, draws their polygons. So it sets up the projection matrix. Once it gets the projection figured out, then it calculates where its strip starts and stops, and then it goes through its strip. It's a two-dimensional strip, and underneath is a bunch of bins that form a grid, and those are there's a linked list of panels. You can basically, what I did is I put each polygon I put into a bin, and then when I'm doing a strip, I just go through all the bins and I mark it drawn if it hasn't been drawn, and I draw it. So I fill the polygon. I did a little trick here. So when you call fill polygon, it returns a count of how many pixels. And what I decided was when you're running, if you look in the distance, look in the distance. So those polygons in the distance are only 1 or 2 pixels. So what I did is I tried to I just ignore them. I have a formula for if it's 1 or 2 pixels, then I don't update it every time. I try to I don't know, I tried to get clever. In theory, it doesn't change as often, but in this program it does. A lot of games don't draw the background so often. Anyway, actually that logic doesn't make sense because I draw the whole screen. Anyway, I decided to count the pixels and then make a formula that made us filter out some of the tiny tiny polygons. I don't know if I think I measured it and it helps just a little bit, not very much. Oh well, kind of silly. So there's got to be a way to, I'm sure you can optimize and get, I just do it by brute force. I have a strip and I just do all the triangles, and I just do it by brute force. I don't think, anyway, my goal is to have, you know, little, you know, 16, 18-year-old teenagers making their own. It's not the same. I think this is different from a normal engine. Am I right? I've never looked at other engines. Anyway, so basically what you do is you draw triangles or draw polygons. I don't think they give you that level of control. So just to contrast, there's another program called Castle Frankenstein. This has 3D meshes that are in my source code. If you can edit them, these are sprites. So you click on the mesh and then you say edit 3D mesh, and you can zoom and rotate them, and basically you place vertices and draw triangles. It's a real pain in the butt. So I have my source code has binary data. I drew my map as a sprite. I drew my monsters as 3D meshes that are sprites. I drew a coffin and a potted plant. So this is castle. I can shoot him. So God said they're dancing. I just had them walking, but God said they're dancing. God said they're dancing. I thought that was funny. So I accidentally made a Gene Wilder movie. Did you ever see, what is it, Bride of Frankenstein? No. Anyway, so I have dancing Frankensteins. Anyway, that was totally unintentional. That's God puppets you. Anyway, so these are done with dithering, random dithering. I have a probability that it'll be one color or another color, and it does a random number for each pixel, and that's how it does it. So basically, if you want it darker, you set a darker probability, and then it does random pixels. Anyway, so this is one core. I could do multi-core, I just didn't feel like it. Anyway, so I have more, what would you call it, headroom? I don't know, I think we're idling 50%, who knows. Anyway, it's kind of difficult to figure out what you should do with the CPU. That's why when I make when we make an official version for version 1.0 that gets burned into Intel chips, we're going to make it 8-core minimum, so that we don't start with we need to start in the future, not in the past. We're not supporting, oh hell no, not 32-bit. Some people are crazy. They think I'm going to do 32-bit. Oh hell no. I'm going to say minimum to play is 8 cores. I think we want 8 cores, not more, not less. If you think about this Eagle Dive, 8 cores, they stay out of each other's way. But if we had 64 cores, I think they'd be stepping on each other's toes, and there would be a lot of lost overhead. Actually, GPU is embarrassingly parallel. The one thing that parallel is good for is graphics. I mean, well, and scientific matrices. But anyway, so I think I'm going to say minimum 8 cores, maximum 8 cores. Well, no, I'm not going to say maximum. Anyway, so this, as a matter of fact, this has a sprite that keeps track of the map, as a matter of fact, it converts it to a internal array. That's I kind of cheated. It's almost, I don't know. I made an array out of the sprite, and then I used the array. I have a 4x4, so somewhere in here it peaks the, here's where it makes a map by peaking the sprite. It converts the sprite to a DC, which is a device context, and then it peaks it to form a map. And then when it's drawing the map, it goes through each square and checks for a line of sight. And if it has a line of sight, it checks the color. And if it's a boundary between floor and rock wall, if it's a boundary, then it draws a wall. If it's a boundary, it draws a wall. So this is, instead of making polygons to do the whole thing, I make them up as I go from the map. So it checks the 4 sides of a square to see if it needs a wall after it checks the line of sight. So it's kind of got some glitches. You can go into the wall. I haven't figured out, anyway, you can kind of go behind the wall. Oh well. It's kind of harder than it looks. Doing the little details is hard. Like doing the foreground clipping with the foreground. What I do is, if I didn't draw the map solid on the floor, I would have a major problem. As a matter of fact, I draw the bottom half of the screen floor just so that I don't have to clip. I'm not very good at clipping triangles into the screen. I need to do that. Anyway, so that's the story.